Hello and welcome along to the Panto podcast. This week I have one of the world's most recognised TV baddies. We're talking about Anne Hegerty, who is my guest for this week's episode. We chat about how she surprisingly got started in pantomime, how the public of all ages have taken to her, and the full story behind that rather naughty question on the chase. I would personally like to thank Anne for her time and for being so open and honest during the interview. So please, sit back and enjoy the latest Panto podcast. My guest for today's Panto podcast is the wonderful and slightly devilish Anne Hegerty. Hello, Anne.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for spending time as well for the podcast.
That's okay.
Pantomime then, was it something you did as a child?
I remember that when we were kids, all the seven Hegerty cousins, would go to Gran's house for Christmas Day. And for several years we did actually, my cousin Libby and I would write a panto, and all the kids would perform it. The last one I remember was in 1974, and it was Coal Black and the 3.5 Morons. It had to be 3.5 because we worked out that with 7 of us, we couldn't get more than 3.5 morons on the stage any one time because the rest of us were all playing other parts. So 3.5 is what it had to be. The only thing is that we wrote it together that summer, and that was the same summer that Blazing Saddles came out, and quite a lot of Blazing Saddles got into it, and I think it was too hip for the room. I think it went over the grown-ups' heads, but we thought it was fantastic.
And was it very exciting then, taking part in a pantomime at that age?
Well, it would be more exciting if you weren't just doing it for your aunties and uncles, I guess. But I'd never really focused particularly hard on Panto until 2014, beginning of September. Mark the Beast Labette rang me up and said, "Do you realise somebody is pretending to be you on Twitter again?" So I was like, okay, fine. The only way to stop this is to get on Twitter. I will get on Twitter. So I got on Twitter, and within a couple of days, a panto producer from the Northwest had tweeted me and said, "How do I contact you about doing panto this year?" So I looked at his name, Googled him, found his website, contacted him through his website, and said, "This is how you contact me." And he said, "We're doing Cinderella, and I'm looking for a wicked stepmother." So I was like, okay, fine. I mean, I'd always thought, it would be cool to do some acting. So I did that, and I mean, I was pretty rubbish. I was missing cues, I was forgetting my lines all the time. But I mean, it was just very good experience. And then I did another panto for him the following year, which was what? Jack and the Beanstalk following year. And then I did an Easter panto, April 2016, also for him, with Basil Brush and Keith Chegwin. Which was great fun. Cheggers was just such a nice bloke. He was so generous. He would always tell you if you were doing something funny. And he was off the book the very first day. He knew his lines right from the start. So I was really impressed by that. And then 2017, I got approached by New Pantomime Productions, who asked me to go to Southsea to do... That was Jack and Beanstalk again, in fact. And they offered me more money than the other guy. Oh. So, frankly. Sorry, but, money's money.
Bills need to be paid, don't they?
Indeed. They asked me to come back the following year to be in Torquay doing Aladdin. That's the only time I've not been a baddie, was 2017 in Torquay when I was the Empress of China. And instead of going around going, ha 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 ha, my catchphrase was, "Yasmin, darling," which I quite enjoyed. It's nice not to be a baddie for a bit. You actually get sort of more involved. I took part in the ghost routine, which I've never done before or since, because you don't do it when you're a bad guy. So I actually got to do that. And then last year I was in Windsor doing Dick Whittington for Bill Kenwright. Which was a little bit strained because it was a long run, and after I'd signed the contract, I got tapped up to do Are You a Celebrity? Are You a Celebrity? No, it's not called that. It's called I'm a Celebrity. That's the one where you go in a jungle and they drop mealworms on your head. And I was sort of saying to my agent, yeah, but, I signed a contract. And they said, you can buy out a contract. So there was an awful lot of toing and froing, and finally it was agreed that for the first 3 weeks, Anita Harris would play my part, Marty Webb would play her part, and I'd be in the jungle. Then I came back and I played the bad guy, and Anita Harris played the fairy, and Marty Webb went to New York. So it all worked out.
And the mealworms, you're still finding them now?
Never again, I tell you. But I mean, there are still, they're still making jungle jokes. There are still jungle jokes in there this year. Touch wood, that's not going to leave anytime soon. But then I got approached by these guys last January, I think. And I'm very impressed. They're called Extravaganza Productions. They're so organised. I got the script in April. I've never had a script that early. Normally, what I'm used to is people are still rewriting the script at the dress rehearsal. The script has existed since April, and not much of it has changed. When I got here, right from the start, when we were rehearsing, we had the dancers and we had the music director. So we were running everything in real time. We were doing scenes and then we were going straight into songs and then back into scenes again. The dancers obviously all knew what they were doing. And so it was just a very easy rehearsal period. I mean, apart from the fact that my lines are so difficult. This year, all my lines are iambic tetrameter, and they're all in sixtains. They're all sort of verses of 6 lines. And so difficult to remember, because if you get something wrong, you can't really busk it unless you've already thought of something that would rhyme if you did get it wrong. So it took a long time for me to be really certain about my lines. I mean, touch wood, I think I'm okay with my lines. But I've got a song which is sort of technically Cell Block Tango from Chicago, but every line has been changed except for the phrase "had it coming." And that's really the only thing that's left. So I had to learn all the lines and sort of say, okay, right now I'm over here, so I do this, so that's that line. And then I'm going over here to her, so that must be that line. And that's sort of how you remember it. Just, okay, this is the point at which I have to step back, so this is this bit, and then the dancers can go in front. But yes, I mean, I've had quite a stressful year, and this has been unexpectedly easy, less stressful than Panto rehearsals usually are. And I do find Panto rehearsals more tiring than the actual shows usually, because when you're rehearsing it, it's Schrödinger's Panto. It's everything is a possibility. You might be going to do this and you might be going to do that, so you rehearse them both. And then by the time you actually open, it's all collapsed down into 2 hours. And all the things you thought you might be going to do, you aren't doing anymore, so you've just got these 2 hours. But as I say, it was so organised that we didn't really have much of that this year. So it's a nice, neat, compact little panto. Runs 2 hours, and everyone seems to be loving it.
When you first started then in sort of pro panto, what was your training?
I really didn't have any training, I have to say. I mean, I'd done some acting at school. I know that when I first started The Chase, our original producer said to me, you're actually quite good at acting. And when I was trying to get an agent, I can remember Kim Woodburn introduced me to her agent, and I went to see her, and she was a bit not very interested. And she said, well, I don't know what to do with you. I don't know what else you could do. And I said, well, my producer thinks I can act a bit. And she said, no. If you were going to act, you'd be acting by now. I was like, okay, fine. But since I've got an agent, I'd be lovely to do more acting. And this is sort of, the one bit of acting that I get to do all year. I think, I remember saying to Emily Atack when I was in the jungle, because both Rita and I were coming out of the jungle into Panto, and we each of us had half an hour in the medical hut every day with our scripts. And I remember saying to Emily that since I'd been in the jungle, being me on screen, I kind of felt a bit freer to create a character in Panto. I felt that up until last year, I'd really only ever been the governess in Panto. And I'd had this sort of lofty, dismissive air to everything. And it was all very flat. It was all just one, monotone all the way through. And I think, since being in the jungle, I think I'm sort of more, I'm mixing it up a bit. I think I'm being more sort of lively and creative on stage than I used to be. I used to just go out there and be the governess.
The governess character then, because I've done a little bit of research.
You have
no
jolly
lie.
good.
And obviously I know your quizzing background. And
Yeah.
It's absolutely
It's
phenomenal that the progress.
It's not bad. There are better female quizzers than me. I've now dropped down to number 4 female quizzer in the world.
Okay.
A couple of American women have come through in the last couple of years, and they really are good. And I keep trying to beat them, and I can't.
So the governess character then, was that your idea, ITV's idea?
I think it was sort of more or less ITV's idea. Originally, I was going to be called the headmistress. And I just sort of thought, okay. I remember the Beast saying to me, if you don't come up with your own nickname, they will come up with one for you, and you probably won't like it. So I was like, fine, okay, I'll be the headmistress. And then during rehearsals, Bradley started referring to me as the governess. And I said to the producers, could I be that instead? Because there's more freedom to being a governess. A headmistress has got to answer to people. A governess, she's self-employed. She's her own agent. She can take the kids off on Mary Poppins adventures if she wants to. Not that I want to. But I just thought, right, let's call her the governess instead. And I got taken out by the stylist to a boutique where we tried on various outfits, and she took pictures. I don't even remember trying on the thing that I actually ended up with. I mean, I was more impressed by the little navy Chanel trouser suit. And I said, when I got back to the studio, I said to the producer, I think I'm having that one. And she said, I think you're not. And I was like, okay, fine. I mean, the thing is, it actually is several £100 worth of Italian tailoring. I just make it look, like it's come from the pound shop. So certainly the belt was not my idea. I don't know whose idea the belt was. I just sort of thought, okay, obviously I'm a cross between Miss Trunchbull and Mama Morton from Chicago. So let's just sort of embrace. I mean, we were told, be intimidating, be dismissive of the contestants. You're going to crush them, like ants. Essentially, one was told to do that, and I just did that.
Because you are playing just really a bit of a baddie role in that, aren't you?
Well, yes, that was the idea. I mean, that's why whenever chasers get tacked up for Panto, it's virtually always as the baddie. Like I say, I've only ever not played a baddie once. It's because, it's assumed that we are intimidating and contemptuous. Excuse me, I'm yawning. We had a 10 o'clock show this morning, and we've got a 7 o'clock show this evening. So there's a lot of sort of late nights and early mornings right now. I apologise for that. I mean, originally we were actually told don't be pantomime villains, but we kind of have turned into pantomime villains. I don't really know how else to do it, to be perfectly honest.
What's it like then when you're in other countries?
When I've done The Chase in Australia, it's pretty similar. I mean, obviously the two shows have different hosts. And in Australia it's a slightly different vibe with the host. In the UK it tends to be sort of Bradley is taking the mick out of me. Bradley is sort of puncturing my pomposity. In Australia it's pretty much the other way around. I'm trying to puncture the host. And sort of stop him being quite so bumptious. So that's how that works there.
You're very, how can I put this?
I'd love to know.
Your humour, where would you say that comes from?
I don't know. I mean, I love humour. I love, anything that makes me laugh. Almost my favourite films are comedy films or films with a good deal of comedy in. When I was a child, the only books that I loved, books, but the ones I liked were virtually always either funny or fantastic, or ideally both. I mean, when I was a kid, I would read humorous writers that were much too old for me, like James Thurber, and I'd think, I don't know why this is funny, but I can see where the jokes are. I can sort of understand the timing of the jokes, even though I don't know why that's a joke. When I'm older, I will understand why that's a joke.
What sort of age would you have been then?
8 or 9 or 10, something like that.
Really early start.
My mother's father was a publisher, and publishers' families their houses are full of books because publishers get given free books and they pass them on. And so I got given loads and loads of children's books, virtually at the time that they were first coming out. So I just read and read and read. And I would find things, that were not perhaps entirely expected, that a child that age would read. I'm not saying they were inappropriate, but things like James Thurber's, it was a collection, it was called The Beast in Me and Other Animals. And I used to love Thurber cartoons, which I thought were hilarious. And as well as creepy, hilarious and creepy. I think I'm sure I used to see the New Yorker somehow. Did my mum have a collection of New Yorker cartoons or something? I'm sure I remember seeing old Addams Family cartoons that I thought were creepy and I liked them at the same time. And there'd be things like that. There'd be things like, there's a book by Jules Pfeiffer called Passionella and Other Stories, which I recently reordered, because a whole load of books that I had as a child, they've kind of disappeared. My mother sold them, my brother's got them, something like that. And I'm sort of like, quite a lot of them, I think, yeah, I want another one of those. I enjoyed that one at the time, I want another one. So I'm sort of, recollecting old kids' books. And as I say, my favourite ones would have been both funny and fantastic.
And what about films then? You mentioned films.
Yeah, I was immensely affected by Blazing Saddles. As I say, a lot of it got into the Panto, and I think it's still probably my favourite film. I'm very fond of it. One of the things I like about Blazing Saddles is that so much of it is... Mel Brooks said that this was down to Richard Pryor being one of the writers. So much of Blazing Saddles is actually quite serious. Everyone mentions the bean eating scene, but the whole point about the baked bean scene is that what the film is saying to us is, do you really believe what the Hollywood movies used to tell you, that you'd have all these cowboys sitting around the fire eating beans and none of them ever broke wind? And while we are on the subject of lies Hollywood has told you, did you know that 1 in 4 of all the cowboys in the Old West were actually black? And you don't see those in the films either. That's basically what it's trying to tell you. There is a seriousness behind it all.
I never knew that.
But it's funny as well.
It is funny.
Really, really funny.
Really funny, silly, bit surreal sometimes.
And I adore Gene Wilder. I've adored Gene Wilder since I saw him in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory when I was 13. And I thought it was just sensational.
Frightening but charming performance.
Just utterly, utterly wonderful. It was the first person I ever fancied who wasn't a person in a book. The first sort of actual real life person. I thought, ooh. Right, I want to get older fast. Changing the subject.
Theatre then, because you've mentioned about Chicago. Mm-mm. Did you go to the theatre much?
Not a great deal. When I left university, I did a postgraduate course in journalism at what was then the School of Journalism at University College Cardiff, then I loved South Wales so much that I got a job in South Wales, and one thing I used to do quite a lot of was theatre reviews. So I used to spend quite a lot of time going to, mostly it was Amdram, and occasionally you'd go to something, you'd go to the Bristol Old Vic or something like that and see something. I did quite a lot of theatre reviews then, but I've not been someone who goes to a great deal of theatre. Part of the thing is, being that I'm autistic, one of the problems with autism, I don't want this to sound like agoraphobia, because it's not agoraphobia. That's a sort of, just going panicky when you're out in public. And this is more a feeling of, okay, I'll go and do this because I want to do this, but I am sort of quietly aware that I'm going to need some decompression time after this. It's hard work going out to the theatre or to the cinema. So it's a thing I don't do that much. Let me think. About 2 years ago, I did go to see Hamilton because I'd been on a plane back from Australia and was sort of surfing around for something to do and found box sets and happened to start listening to the cast album. And by about the third track, I was like, okay, I get it. I have to own this album and I have to see this show. So I went to see that in London, which was tremendous. But I'm not a massive theatre. My favourite thing that I ever saw on stage. Another thing about autistic people, we tend to get these obsessions. We'll develop what are called perseverations. Something just strikes a chord with us, and we just have to know everything about it. And in August 1991, I went to the Royal Exchange Theatre in Manchester, and I saw a musical called Dr. Hart, which had been written by Hungarians, and then Trevor Peacock had done English lyrics for it. And I came out of the theatre going, that is absolutely the best thing I have ever seen on a stage in my whole life. And it ran for about 6 weeks, and in the space of those 6 weeks, I went to see it about 8 times. And it got to where, by the time they were taking their bows, you could see that the cast was sort of looking at each other. She's here again. She's had her haircut. They were starting to recognise me. And it was just, I can't explain what was so good about it. And if you Google it, it's extremely difficult to find anything whatsoever about it. But I just absolutely loved it. Sometimes you can't explain why you loved something.
A few years ago then, you decided to go public about the autism.
Well, I never decided to. It was just, if anyone asked me to, I would sort of say that I was autistic. And for some reason, nobody paid any attention until it was about mid-2017. And I had given an interview to, I think it was Fabulous magazine. And then I'd gone to Australia. And then I came back to find that it had come out in the UK, and suddenly everyone was like, whoa, okay, we've suddenly discovered this person is autistic. I'm like, I wasn't making a secret of it, it's just the rest of you didn't want to listen. And at that point, I started getting invited on things. It's the first time I started getting invited on chat shows without having to be in the governess outfit. Because for a long time, I would only be invited on TV if I was dressed as the governess. And from mid-2017, that's the point at which I started getting invited on things like Loose Women and so on, actually in my own clothes. I mean, I do have clothes. So, it's quite nice that people finally recognise that.
Did that feel good, though?
It was like,
yourself, really?
Well, it's nice to not just be the governess. If you're just the governess, nobody ever thinks of offering you, work as anything else. I mean, that was why I was so grateful when I finally started being asked to do Panto. Because I sort of pretty much was playing the governess in Panto. At least I was technically playing a different character. I was learning lines and I was wearing actual costumes that weren't the same as my costume on the chase. And it was just, a chance to be someone slightly not quite the governess. I've become more not quite the governess as time has gone on.
Has the public been a lot warmer to you?
They certainly seem to like me in this Panto. I get people waiting outside the stage door, and they seem to be pleased. People have been posting on the Facebook page, Middlesbrough Theatre's Facebook page, and saying that they came to see me and they like me. So that was nice. I think there's been, and also, there has been a change since I came out of the jungle. That's really raised the profile. So people are more willing to think of me as me, even though me was, sitting on the logs crying, basically. I'm not just the governess, I'm also the person who's actually pathetic about having mealworms dropped on her head. It's a different persona, I'll take that.
How was it, though, in the jungle?
It was horrible. It really was. But I made 10 great new friends out of it. The thing is, we are still all in touch. We have a WhatsApp group, and all our family members that came out, they have their own WhatsApp group as well. I remember my brother saying to me in a bemused sort of way when we were at the airport about to go home, so I just had breakfast this morning with my new best friend, Harry Redknapp. And he thought, how did this happen? And partly, of course, it's because Harry is just an incredibly nice bloke. But they all are. We happened to be just a really nice year. I was so lucky to be in there with such nice people. And basically they kept me in there. They stopped me from leaving when I was like, I can't do this, I absolutely just cannot possibly stand this, I need to go home. And they were like, stay here a bit longer, we really like you. It just made such a difference that they were so lovely.
The quizzing then.
Mm.
When did that first sort of come into your life?
Well, I was always the kind of nerdy child that's always reading books. And I was always the kind of child that I was always immensely disappointed when someone was trying to teach me stuff and I realised I actually knew more than they did. I was like, no, this is not the right way round.
And did you tell them?
Well, yes, I did. They were never as grateful as I felt they should have been. But I can remember I was about 8 years old, maybe. I tend to crunch things so that everything happened when I was 8 years old. But even so, it was around about there. My primary school decided that they were going to teach us, the art of asking questions and finding things out. So every day, 2 kids would be chosen to sit in a corner for a few hours with a load of reference books on the table, and you could come to them and ask them a question, and they would answer it for you. And I quite innocently managed to screw this up the very first day, because I went up to them and said, what does the word mitigate mean? And they didn't know, and they couldn't find out. And the teacher came over to me and said, you've been asking about this word, there's no such word. And I said, there is such a word. All right, where have you come across it? And I said, it's 3 lines from the end of Portia's big speech in The Merchant of Venice. It goes, I have spoke thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou follow, this strict court of Venice must needs give sentence against the merchant here. And I thought she was going to thump me. So she stormed off, and she came back a few minutes later and shoved a crumpled bit of paper in my hand, and I opened it, and it said, mitigate, make less severe. So I was like, okay, good, now I know, thank you. I was just, guys, I want someone to help me when I don't know stuff, and it's disappointing when you tell me that I somehow know more stuff than I should. And I mean, one reason I knew that speech was that I had discovered that I was good at memorising things. So I knew quite a lot of Shakespeare off by heart because it was just fun to try and learn it and see if I could remember it. And that was one of the speeches that was in my head. So I was always sort of interested in reading and finding stuff out. But it wasn't until, it was about 11 years ago, 10.5 years ago, that I discovered that there was a high-level quizzing circuit in the UK. And I kind of fell into this by accident, and it was just about the time that they'd done the little pilot series of The Chase in 2009 with just Mark and Sean. And they'd been looking for a female chaser and had me able to find one. And I just sort of fell onto the circuit at the time when they were looking for me. So it all sort of happened very quickly. But I've always felt, I've got to maintain my skills. I've got to sort of maintain my right to be a chaser. So I do as much quizzing as I can. There's a big national quiz somewhere on the first Saturday of every month. So in fact this year it's actually on the 11th because of New Year, so I'll be going to that. I'm going to the Celtic Nations Championship in Dublin in April, which is Scotland, Wales and Ireland. It's a different capital every year, and my mother was from Glasgow, so I'm representing Scotland, and I've already booked that. I'll be doing that, and I intend to go for the first time in 4 years. What I hope I'm going to have time to do in August is to go to Las Vegas and take part in what's called Trivia Nations, which is essentially a weekend of quizzing and mocked-up game shows. They do a lot of those. So I've sort of had a chance to take part in things like Pointless and Only Connect, but only at Trivia Nations. And it's just huge fun. You just meet all these quizzers from all over the United States, and occasionally some Brits and some people who aren't from the States. And it's just the most massive fun. It's brilliant. I love it.
Any people then who are listening who are going to be contestants of the chase, what are your weak subjects?
I like to think I have no weeks. No, actually, I mean, really, you've only to watch it to be aware that I'm not as good at sport as I am at everything else. I try and work on my sport, but there's so much sport, and it changes all the time. And the only one I'm really interested in is tennis. So, but I sort of try and keep up. And you have to, you're always reading, you see stories in the papers, oh, right, I need to remember that, how many of these football managers have suddenly changed? My greatest regret about being in the jungle is that I should have spent more time listening to Harry, because he told fantastic stories, which I'd mostly ignored, and I've learnt since that if I had listened to them, A, it would have been enormous fun, and B, I would have improved my sports stats so much. So, any time I get a chance to hang out with Harry and hear his stories, then I do.
What is the process then for you now? Is it cramming information from textbooks again?
Yeah, it's I use the internet an awful lot. I play quizzes quite a lot, although the last couple of weeks my laptop, I think, is close to death. So I'll either play them on my iPad or I'll wait until I can get another laptop.
Santa's coming, isn't he? So.
Well, yeah, but it's awful of me. I kind of don't need Santa to come. I have money anyway. But yes, I really, I'm the sort of person that just uses things until they break. Basically, I don't upgrade things until they actually stop working. It's partly parsimoniousness, but it's partly just sort of wanting things to stay the same. Why should I buy myself a new one when then I would have to get to learn how the new one works? But I'm kind of going to have to, because my existing laptop will now only start in safe mode, and it just kind of looks weird. So I have to do that. But yeah, there's a lot of sort of going on quizzing websites, playing quiz games. There's an online quiz that I play every day, and you can see when your other friends have submitted their quiz, and then you can go online and chat to them and say, okay, I got this many, how many did you get? I missed this, what did you miss? And that's quite fun to do. But obviously you can't do it until they have all submitted, because it's very honest. People could cheat, but it's really not. It's deeply frowned upon. So, and I sort of think, what's the point? I want to get there by not cheating, and I need to learn this stuff. The best way to learn quiz information is to do a lot of quizzes. Actually, no, the best way to learn quiz information is to write quizzes, but I don't tend to do that. So the next best way is to do a lot of quizzes.
I am guilty of that. I do write a quiz for Chortle.
Excellent.
A comedy website. I've been doing it now for, we're not far off 200 quizzes for Chortle.
Right. Are they archived on the website?
They are archived on the website, so you'll have to give me some feedback.
Yeah, I'll have a look at those.
It all depends on how good you are at your comedy, if you like your comedy.
Well, I got a couple of weeks ago, I got invited to, no, it was last week, I think. There was a quiz at a pub nearby called the Linthorpe Arms. And I was asked to go and read out the questions. So I did. And the thing is, even by doing that, you learn stuff you didn't necessarily know. I said to them, can you make sure I get the questions first, ahead of time, because I wanted to check in case there were any errors. And there were some things that made me think, hang on a minute, that can't be right. And I'd go and look it up. Whoa, that is right. Okay, well, now I know that. I didn't know that before. So that's always useful.
Are you one of those in a pub quiz as well that gets extremely frustrated when the quizmaster reads out the wrong question or the wrong
that
answer?
Is incredibly annoying. I mean, basically, don't go to a pub quiz that's that cheap. I'm like quite a lot of quizzes. I'm actually not that good at pub quizzes, because pub quizzes tend to have things like picture rounds, which I'm not great at. And things like, they'll play you the intros of songs or something, which I might be okay at, but it depends on the era. There are some eras that I'm a lot better at than I was. I've been amazed sitting here in the theatre and, between shows they might start playing music. When the kids are in, they'll play music to sort of keep them quiet. And amazing numbers of kids singing along to like Old Town Road or something, and I thought, that's really not even a sing-alongable song, but they know all the words. And I'm thinking, well, 40 years ago I was listening to The Clash and my mother didn't understand that. 40 years ago she was probably listening to Henry Hall and her mother didn't understand that. So it's what happens.
Cyclical, isn't it? It just goes round.
Yes, yeah.
So when it comes then to learning your lines, you say you got the script in sort of April time.
Yes, but I've been so busy this year, since August, basically it hasn't stopped. So I was not very fluent when I got here, but I find the rehearsal process is very good at just drilling it into your head. But as I say, I've got so many such complex lines this year. It is still the case that when I'm waiting in the wings, I am going over it in my head. And in the morning, when I have my shower, I am going through the lines, out loud, all the way through. I just over and over again, just to be absolutely sure that, that I'm not going to trip up.
You said as well earlier about the Shakespeare, and you can remember whole chunks of Shakespeare.
Well, I could as a child. There's really only 2 speeches I know now, and that's To Be or Not to Be and The Quality of Mercy. Those are really the only 2 that I still have at my fingertips.
Would you ever like to take part in a bit of Shakespeare?
I wouldn't mind. Not quite sure who I could play. I don't know, funny enough to be Mistress Quickly. So, hey, if someone's got a Shakespeare part for me, I'd be that awful nurse in Romeo and Juliet, wouldn't I? Interested if anyone. The thing is, it's difficult to combine stage and doing TV. Stage stuff gets booked up so early. I will presumably know what I'm doing next Christmas in about a month's time. I've already had to say to the Chase, look, I know that you're planning to do some filming in November and December. I'm probably not going to be available for that. So you're going to have to, make that up for me earlier, in earlier blocks. But yeah, it can be a bit tricky trying to balance them both.
The singing.
See, my song that I'm doing in this show, as I say, it's sort of basically cell block tango, but I've been specifically told don't sing it. Basically, just talk sing. Do, Rex Harrison in My Fair Lady, which I've recently discovered. I always thought that was called Sprechgesang, and actually it turns out it's called something more like Sprechstimme. So that's interesting to know. They're operatic terms, apparently. I have sung a bit in Panto. I mean, last year I did a duet with Anita Harris that was Taylor Swift's Look What You Made Me Do. And then I had a solo of my own that was Michael Jackson's Bad. I got Fleur East to teach me that in the jungle. But there was one awful occasion when I'd been eating chocolate just beforehand, and I try and remember eating chocolate just beforehand makes me cough. And I had this massive coughing fit in the middle of the song. And I only found out after the show was over that was the show that Elton John came to watch. Oh. So, great, I'm never going to be famous now.
He won't want you for a duet, will he?
But, no, I mean, Jenny, obviously, my colleague on the Chase, just did brilliantly on Celebrity X Factor, made the final 3. And I always sort of wanted to be a singer as a child, but realistically, I don't have the breath control that Jenny's got. That's the real reason that I'm not a singer. I can't punch it out there the way she can. But, if I'm given a song, I will give it a go, and I can carry a tune. I don't know if you saw us in Let's Sing and Dance for Comic Relief, early 2017. And it was the show's idea that we should do The Wizard of Oz, but one of the first things they did was to test our voices and establish, okay, they can actually all sing in tune. Right. So now we know that we can do these Wizard of Oz songs. So I think, had there been one of us that actually couldn't, then they might have thought of something else. But in the very first panto I did in Cinderella, my solo was actually another Chicago song, When You're Good to Mama. And then the following year, Jack and the Beanstalk, what did I sing? Can't remember. And in the Easter Panto, I had a little bit of a duet, which was popular from Wicked. Um, and then the following year, again, I had a bit of a duet. And 2017, what did I sing in 2017? I may not have sung anything, possibly. Oh, I remember what I wanted to do. There was a scene where the Dame, Widow Twankey, and I discovered that we were old school friends. And we were talking about basically what a couple of old tarts we'd been. And I really wanted us to do a duet of El King's X's and O's. And they were very doubtful, but they did actually sit down and arrange it and try it. And that was the point at which I discovered that my voice didn't have the range that song needed. But otherwise, I would have liked to do that. It's a great song, lovely song.
Maybe you and Jenny could do a little something.
I really hope that Jenny is now getting loads of offers, because I was surprised she didn't get tapped up after Comic Relief. I think the guy who did the musical direction on that show did invite her down to London to do some demos, but I don't think anything came of it. And I'm like, did you not hear her? Did you not listen to her? And I was quite worried that she was going to go on and actually win Celeb X Factor, and then she'd be tied to Simon Cowell. And it was like, now the Chase are going to fight with Simon Cowell for Jenny's availability. And wouldn't one like to be a fly on the wall watching that happen? But I feel like it's almost the best of all worlds that... she probably could sign up with Cowell if she wants, or she could sign up with someone else. She must be getting offers by now. I don't know, because I haven't seen her since she did it. But I definitely think that she's been singing for years, and I like that people finally listen to her.
Going back to Panto then, and also the Chase kind of, your Christmas specials.
Yes.
You get to dress up quite a bit. Do
We
you
do.
enjoy that sort of...
We've had Christmas specials where we were dressed as Panto characters, where we were dressed as sort of generally Christmas characters. We've had one where we were dressed as Dickens characters. And I think the theme this year, I'm not going to give you any more detail except to say that we have two Christmas specials this year. One, we're just dressed in very glamorous outfits. And the other one, we are dressed... our clothes are based on classic Christmas movies. So that's what we're doing.
Look forward to seeing
I'm,
that.
I'm not admitting who I am or from what film, but that's the theme.
But do you like that, though? The whole dressing up, the costumes,
It is rather fun. It's a
sparkle.
nuisance that we have to keep on going and having costume fittings, and you have to keep going off and doing it. It's time consuming. But it's nice to see the results, and the audience like it, and it's funny. And we did them, let me think, last year we recorded them in April because they were just closing the London studios, and we were basically the last show out of there, so that's why we did it in April. And they now seem to have decided that doing it in April is a good idea, and now we're going to be doing it in April every year. So costume fittings start earlier and earlier.
And Panto costumes.
Yeah, we have the most fabulous... can you see my costumes in here? I have
Yes.
4 changes of costume. I have one that's sort of purple and silver and black sequins. And they've all got headdresses to match, which you can see. And they're also very tall and feathery, and they catch on the underside of the door when I'm leaving the dressing room. And there's one that's sort of black and silver and red. And then there's this green thing, which is sort of green and black. And the idea is that I've been living in the forest for 100 years, and I've sort of become rather tree-like, except much angrier than your average tree. And then there's what I have always called the walk-down outfit that they just call the finale, which is this sort of burgundy velvet job. And they are gorgeous. I started having fittings for those in summer. And then I was going to Peterborough to do a charity thing. And because it's not very far, I went over to Boston, where the people who do the Panto live, and they did more costume fittings. So, we've all got these sort of luxurious outfits, and they are... Yeah, sumptuous. The costumes and the sets are just really sort of rich.
What is it you like about Panto so much then?
I like having a chance to act and having a chance to do it in front of an audience because, I mean, it's kind of an open secret that the daytime versions of The Chase, that's canned laughter and canned applause that you're hearing. We do the celebrity shows with real audiences. But, you know, it's nice to actually hear the kids getting excited. Every audience is different. And seeing if you can kind of encourage them to get excited. I mean, today there was just so much screaming, I was seriously worried I wouldn't actually be able to hear my cues. But they did eventually shut up when I needed them to shut up.
You should tell them to shut up.
I tried, they just screamed. In the very first, when I came out for my very first entrance, they were screaming and screaming. I've been told normally if they're screaming, stop to wait until they're not screaming so much. But my very first entrance has a music track under it. So I've kind of got to be on my lines rather than getting behind the track. So I was just sort of bellowing the lines out of them, whether they could hear me or not.
What about the company then, when you get together with the people? They're
lovely people. I mean, I'm very lucky. I've only ever once worked with someone I didn't like. Oh, this is really embarrassing because everyone's going to listen and going to think, was that me? It almost certainly wasn't you. It certainly wasn't an actor. It wasn't one of the actors. But generally, I get on really well with Panto companies, and they're always really nice and just really professional. And it's nice to be in the company of people who are, actors and don't do what I do. And I'm, sort of trying to keep up with them. And the idea is, I'm the one with the name. My job is to put bums on seats, and then everyone else's job is to actually be good and surround me so that people don't notice I'm not as good.
Do you remember that first time when you got recognised? I'm trying to think. In the street? Not really, because the thing is, it just happens so often now. It just happens over and over again. I've been going to the big quizzes once a month, so people at the quizzes knew who I was, and I was just another quizzer who just sat down at the table and did the quiz. But it is quite nice when people, you're in the supermarket and people suddenly do a double take. Or someone's serving you and then right when they finish serving you, they whisper, "You're my favourite one." Oh, that's nice, thank you. But it's a nice feeling, though.
It is, yes. I mean, I've had some nice reactions from the people at Middlesbrough. Well, see, they're all my friends. It kind of wouldn't work if we didn't all get on. So, they're all my mates. And if someone's rude to me or about me on Twitter, I tend to laugh and agree with them. If someone's rude to or about one of the other chasers, at this point I sort of, I lose my sense of humour.
I've witnessed that before.
Yeah, it has been known for me to get in trouble. But, if someone's rude about one of my friends, then I'm liable to get much more aggressive than if they're rude about me.
Do you get the nerves?
On the chase, I really don't. I honestly don't, because I just sort of instinctively feel I know what I'm doing. I mean, there are times, no, actually almost every time, when they're about to start the head-to-head, and I'm thinking to myself, this is where I get found out. This is where they'll suddenly set me questions that I just don't know, or I read the question too fast and I go wrong. And there is, always the possibility of doing that. But I know that I know my quizzing. So I've often said, I wake up in the morning, I have coffee, I have a shower, I get dressed, I go to the studio, I get made up, I get in my costume, and then I'm on the floor getting mic'd up. And at that point I'm thinking, right, I've done all the difficult stuff. Now comes the easy bit. Now comes recording the chase. I know how to do that. So not so much that. I don't normally get stage fright. I must say this year, to an extent I have, because of my complicated lines and my fear of drying. I haven't, touch wood, actually done that. I've fluffed them occasionally, but by and large, if I've tried for a second or so, I've got it back. But, there is this fear of just, as sometimes happened in rehearsals, of just getting absolutely stranded and like, I'm sorry, I have no idea what comes next, because the bit that comes next doesn't even make any sense to me. Because I can't even remember how that bit ties in with what I've just said. So it's been very difficult. But at the same time, I've really enjoyed it. And I think, touch wood, that I'm acting better than I have before, better than I ever have, probably in this show. And people seem to be liking it.
I wonder what that 8-year-old little girl would have thought years later to think.
She wouldn't have been surprised. This is the weird thing. As a child, I always thought, I'm going to be famous. I didn't actually admit to anyone, I'm going to be famous. But I just sort of thought, I ought to be famous. Why am I not famous yet? And so it's terrible, but I kind of always did want to be famous and somehow think that I merited being famous. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to be famous as. But I just thought, no, I feel famous, darlings. It's awful, but I was sort of ready for it. It's a terrible thing to admit. And of course, on another level, I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm a £15 an hour proofreader. I really, I'm going to get found out. I mean, for a long time, for years after the chase started, I retained my membership of the Society of Editors and Proofreaders, because I thought, this is all going to come to a halt and I'll have to go back to it. And it's only in the last couple of years I've actually let my membership lapse. And I still think, was that a good idea?
Oh, bless you. I didn't know that still kind of...
Well, yeah,
the
you
rug
sort of think...
kind of being pulled underneath your feet, isn't it?
You sort of think, suppose the chase comes to an end. I mean, what else? There's no other, show for quiz experts except eggheads, and they're not looking for more eggheads. Could I do anything else? Would I get offered anything else? I don't know. Which is why I'm so glad that, I've got this little game show that I've been doing for the last couple of years, Britain's Brightest Family. And we've recorded, we've done 2 series of that, and then we've now recorded a celebrity series, which should be going out fairly early next year, I think. And that should be a lot of fun. So I hope people will watch that.
Because, again, you have this real appeal from the little ones right through to grandma.
Yes. Well, the thing is, I was always wondering, who is watching us? It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I always used to say, nobody with a job knows who I am. But I discovered, it tended to be everyone's mums, everyone's nans, students, children. I've been sent videos of babies, sort of jumping up and down in their cot when it's me coming on. I'm like, how can the baby even tell it's me? Just such a mix of people. And there are people who have it on at work. People, my hairdresser, for example, has the chase on at 5 o'clock. There are times when I walk in and go, oh, it's one of mine. Okay, can I get a dry cut, please?
Does that make you a little bit embarrassed then when you see yourself on the telly?
I don't tend to watch myself, because I just think, what good would it do? So I don't, but I'm very pleased that other people do.
Well, of course, you're in the famous clip as well, the Fanny Schmeller.
Oh,
bit.
yeah. That was a total stitch-up. The question setters had come across this name, and they'd gone to the producers and said, we'd like to write this question. What do you think? And the producers said, okay, go for it. So they'd confirmed it with the producers. Obviously, Brad had no idea what was coming up. Obviously, I had no idea what was coming up. And this happens, and the thing is, you watch it, and everyone sort of sniggers a bit, haha, funny name, And then you realise that Brad has gone into this sort of full body clench. And he's obviously thinking, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there are children watching, this is completely inappropriate. I don't want the parents to have to explain to the children, Mummy, why is that man laughing so much? So I've got to kind of bottle it up. And the more he tries to bottle it up, the more hysterical it is. And the more I'm looking up and to the left, if you look at that clip, because he's down there to the right, and I'm thinking, don't look at him, don't look at him, don't look at him. And I'm trying so hard to keep it together, because I'm thinking it'd be so unprofessional of me to start laughing. And then, as it happens, I finally lose it just at the best possible time, because he more or less got it back together. And then I start losing it, and then he's laughing at me losing it. And it's just fantastic. And I came down... when I came back down the steps, one of the first things they said to me was, virtually all of that is staying in. And I'm like, you're kidding. And they were like, no, we're keeping that in, it's gold.
Millions of hits as well.
Oh
on
my
YouTube
goodness,
and
yeah. I
everything.
mean, it was late 2011 it went out. So it's about 8 years old. And yes, everyone's still... I mean, let's face it, on my tombstone, it's going to say, Fanny Schmeller is excluded on medical grounds. I mean, it's what I'm going to be remembered for.
Well, let's not talk about final, but anything that you'd like to still do in your career.
Ooh, I'd love to do screen acting. I'd love to do some TV acting. The guy who writes our funny lines on The Chase, you know, when we go out there and we say something crushing, we've generally not written that ourselves. We have a guy who writes them. He comes up with a variety of them, and, you know, I might pick one and we might customise it a bit. And he's brilliant. And he's actually written a sitcom that's got a part for me in it. So I would love it, absolutely love it, if somebody picked that up. So, you know, anyone out there who wants to produce a sitcom, we have, you know, we have a synopsis of 6 episodes, and we have a fully written script for the pilot.
What kind of character are you playing there?
I'm the sort of like only sane person. It's the idea is you have these two rather daft brothers, and one of them's wife, and then I'm the housekeeper, and I am I'm the one who goes in and picks up the pieces after they've done something idiotic. What's her name? Mrs. Stoneley, I think I am. So, yeah, and I would love to do that. That'd be brilliant.
You never know who's listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
really
yes.
does.
Please call me. Call my agent. My agent's name is in my Twitter bio. So that would be fantastic. I'd love to do more. I'd love to do comedy. I'd love to be back on things like Celebrity Juice, which I did once and it was hilarious. You know, just more different TV. No more documentaries, please. I don't like doing documentaries. But, you know, anything funny. That would be good.
And definitely no jungle.
I don't really think so. Actually, I did get invited out to do Extra Camp this year, and that would have been great. My agent actually kept that from me because he knew perfectly well that if I knew they'd ask me out, I'd try and think of a way of doing it. And he knew that I was so stressed out with so much work that I couldn't. So he was quite right to keep it from me. He said to me, "You can be a little bit disappointed, but, you know, let me tell you this." And I'm sort of like, I'm not disappointed, actually. I'm glad that they invited me. It's nice to know they invited me. And I'm glad you turned it down without telling me, because you know I would have tried to find a way to get out there. And you also knew that I didn't have time and I'd drive myself around the bend. I've just been working so hard and I'm not good enough at saying no. So I have been really under quite a lot of strain. Which is why this Panto has been so nice, because it's just been an unexpectedly stress-free rehearsal period. And I've just enjoyed the whole thing.
What do you do then to relax?
I read. I mean, to be perfectly honest, to relax, I'd probably do some quizzes. You know, it's a terrible confession. But, you know, I actually might go on, there's a wonderful website called Sporkle, and I might go on there and play quiz games on there. I just read a lot. I read social media a lot. I'm always on Facebook and Twitter just because I follow people who will post interesting things. So I'm constantly... You know, I'll go into Twitter, and what comes up isn't Twitter. What comes up instead is an article that I clicked through to and was in the middle of reading, and got distracted somehow. So, you know, I'll sort of be doing that. I have, you know, because I have most of my friends on Facebook are quizzers rather than TV people. And quizzers, you know, are just sort of endlessly curious, and they'll be posting interesting articles. You know, I've just found this, isn't this interesting? That sort of thing. I'll be reading things like that.
Are you one of them that will go, I'm guilty of this, going on Wikipedia, and then you find yourself 5 hours later?
I love Wikipedia. I am not even ashamed. Wiki surfing is actually so good for quizzes.
Is that what it's called? Wiki surfing?
Wiki surfing, yeah. You find something that leads you to something else, and somebody's actually done the research, and the page that everyone is most likely to end up at if they just keep wiki surfing is philosophy, because apparently everything leads to philosophy. So there actually is research that shows that's the one that people end up on. But yes, I like to... Wikipedia is just so useful for things like... I like to sort of go and read about things like the Wars of the Roses, because I can never keep clear who everybody is. There's a wonderful, the wonderful book 1066 and all that. And there's a line in that about one of the rules of the Wars of the Roses was that nobody was actually king, but Edmund Mortimer really should be. And then you go on Wikipedia and try and work out who Edmund Mortimer was. And you're like, oh yeah, he somehow managed to be related to everybody at the same time. So that's interesting. And then you work out how Henry VI was related to the Tudors and how he got on with the Tudors, quite well actually, and things like that. And the problem is that Edward III had about 15 kids, and so you can't keep them straight. But, I'm better than I was. I know of the existence of people called things like Lionel of Antwerp. So, you'd think he'd be out of King Arthur, wouldn't you?
Well, this leads me on to my very last question. Mm-hmm. Your dream pantomime. You can be in it. Mm-hmm. You can be sitting in the stalls watching it. Mm-hmm. You can choose the venue. Mm-hmm. You choose the production, and the cast can be alive or dead.
Oh, wow. The pantos I've actually done have been Cinderella, Jack and the Beanstalk twice, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Dick Whittington, and Sleeping Beauty. There's not that many left, are there? There's Goldilocks and the Three Bears, which doesn't get done very often. There's Puss in Boots, that doesn't get done all that often. I suppose the two big ones are Cinderella and Aladdin. Tricky. Aladdin is the one where you're always worried about being racist, and then Cinderella is the one where the dame has to be a baddie, which sort of feels slightly uncomfortable. Like I say, I've done Jack and the Beanstalk twice. I do quite enjoy it. It's quite a straightforward plot when you get to figure it out. Very much the same plot as Dick Whittington, really. It's poor boy loves rich girl, and witch is trying to make him leave and go somewhere else. I remember. Jack and the Beanstalk. That's it. Jack and the Beanstalk was the same story as Aladdin. That's what I worked out. It's both about poor boy loves princess, and evil person is trying to trick him to selling something for something that isn't really worth it, except it is worth it. Because I remember someone saying, Aladdin doesn't really have a plot. And I thought, no, it does have a plot, and it's the same plot as Jack and the Beanstalk. What are you talking about? I do rather like Aladdin. I don't want to be in it. I'd like to watch it for once. Trying to think who would be in it. My favourite comic that I've ever been in a panto with is a guy called Matt Darlin, who is unbelievably good. Second favourite comic ever is a guy called Ryan Greaves, who is also fantastically good. I mean, I've never, been in a show with anyone who's bad at anything. So they are exceptionally good. Favourite dame? Oh, gosh. There's just so many, and they're all so good. Maybe Sam Rabone? Don't really know, hard to say. I don't want to distinguish between people, they're all so good. It would be quite fun to be in a panto with my fellow chasers, especially Jenny, who's done panto before. And I suppose I have a special fondness for the King's Theatre in Southsea, which is a beautiful theatre, although you can't park near it. Absolutely zero parking at all. I don't know what Frank Matcham was thinking, but he obviously wasn't thinking about the parking. So that's annoying. Oh, gosh. I love them all. I don't really want to distinguish.
That's okay. I'll let you off that.
Thank you.
I'll let you off. Over the years, then, has anybody taken you under their wing?
My very first panto, everyone was very nice and supportive. The Dane was a guy called Steve Morwood, and he was very helpful because obviously he was playing my daughter, the ugly stepdaughter, and I was the stepmother. So we had quite a lot of scenes together, and he was sort of helpful and supportive. And the fairy, Keely Fitzgerald, who she is excellent. I would happily be in a panto with her again. So good, and she's very good and very funny. So they were helpful, and I sort of learned. Although I seem to forget it over the last few years, but I learned about sort of having plenty of energy, and I've been trying to keep that up for this panto. Our company manager, who's also playing Princess Aurora's father, is Terry Ash, and he's been very encouraging to me and saying, you know, you're really good. You're frightening me when I'm in the scene with you, which is brilliant. You know, I love knowing that I'm scaring him. So I've sort of actually been trying to remember. You know, they didn't invite me to the christening, and I'm really angry, and sort of maintaining that level of angriness.
So you're a bit method.
I'm sort of trying to be. It's a question of how far you can be method with panto, because I'm sort of like, you know, why has this thing happened at this point in the script? Why have I just ordered the goblin to leave the stage with me and he's never seen again? What did I do with him? You know, things like that. You just can't ask too many questions of it, you know.
It's pantomime though,
It's
isn't it?
panto, yeah.
It's a bit of fun, isn't it? And it's what do you think that makes panto so important for the Brits?
I don't know why panto can't be done in other countries. People in Australia have no idea what I'm doing. And the thing is, I mean, our host in Australia would be excellent in panto. One of the other chasers, a guy called Issa, would be superb in panto. I can absolutely see him as someone like Buttons. You know, they don't get the chance because they don't do it there. Admittedly, in Australia, it's hot over Christmas, so they just all want to be on the beach. I don't know if there is anything especially British about it. It just happens to be something that we do and other countries don't. But we love it because it's a chance to take the kids along and kind of be a bit of a kid yourself and pretend that you're doing it for the benefit of the kids, and actually you're doing it because you want to do a bit of booing and go, it's behind you, and oh no it isn't. You know, and it's actually the grown-ups want to do that, but panto is the opportunity for them to do it. A friend of mine, who is an adult, came along to the panto Dick Whittington in Windsor last year to see me, and he was amazed at how much he enjoyed it on his own without any kids. And he was just, I haven't stopped grinning. I'm just laughing and smiling so much, and I wasn't expecting to. So he just had a great time.
You said earlier as well about you took part in the ghost gag.
Yes, I got to do the ghost gag in Aladdin in Torquay 2017, because that's the one where I wasn't the bad guy. And we did, we'll have to sing it again then, won't we? Woo! I can't quite remember how the feet go, but I would be able to remember, you know, pretty quickly.
I could show you.
Yeah, I'd probably start with the wrong foot or something. But yeah, we did all of that, and that was fun. Yeah, it was nice to sort of actually feel part of that. I mean, I've never, because of being the baddie, I've never, for example, done 12 Days of Christmas. They don't do 12 Days of Christmas in this show. But I've never... No, wait, that's not true. The first time I did Jack and the Beanstalk, the 12 Days of Christmas included 5 sumo wrestlers, and they had 3 pictures of sumo wrestlers, and then they had me and the princess in blow-up fat suits, and we were the other 2 sumo wrestlers, and that was fun. But I didn't get to do it, you know, as Flesh Creep or whatever her name was. Yeah, that's the only time I've ever been involved in 12 Days of Christmas.
Would you like to do that, though? The whole running round and, you know...
Sort of. It looks extremely demanding. I think it would need a lot of rehearsing. I can never remember who's doing what in what order. And so I'm always amazed when I see people do it.
It is an art form how they can do that and do it so well.
Yes,
and especially as well if somebody is being a little bit off the book and a bit cheeky.
Yeah. And mad things happening. Like one of the things that I loved about doing the Panto in 2016 in Southsea was doing it with Vicky Michelle from Hello Hello. She was fantastic and so lovely and nice. And she had, it was something like, one of hers was a bunch of roses, something like eight red roses or something like that in a bunch. And they used to, the text would tie string to it and sort of haul it off stage and then sort of dangle it over the back of the backdrop and things like that. And that was hilarious. It's so childish, but it's hilarious.
Do you think there's still a big part of you that's still a little child wanting to take part in all of this as well? That little 8-year-old girl just getting excited
I was always, as a child, I felt very self-conscious about enjoying things like Panto. And I used to sit there with, I've always had the kind of face that doesn't express a lot unless I make it do so. It's always sort of fundamentally, my face is resting bitch face, unless I actually work on making it something else. And there are times when I would watch clips of me in the jungle, and I'd think, hang on a minute, I remember that bit, and I was really engaged in the conversation and listening and fascinated by it, and I look as if I'm not paying any attention at all. So, quite often I was probably like that as a child as well. I think in a way I can enjoy this stuff more than I did as a child. In particular because I'm not sitting in the audience, I'm on the stage doing it, and it's okay for me to overact and snarl and growl and threaten people. I do enjoy the threatening people. I like that bit.
Do you? The booze?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And picking on the dads in the audience as well?
I don't really do that so much. That's sort of more the comics, the comic and the dame.
No, you don't
and I'm
sort
just sort of, you are all pathetic, I shall crush you like worms, I shall. And that sort of thing, I like doing that. Threatening people.
I'm sitting back in my chair now. Could you see yourself, Heather, as a good fairy?
I wouldn't mind playing the good fairy. The very first time I tried to get Panto was, 2013, and somebody said that they were going to suggest me to Dorcas Wood, I think it was, and she was doing something for which I might have been the good fairy, and then instead they subbed in someone off the X Factor who, let's face it, would have sung a lot better. So I'd be quite happy to be a sort of slightly bumbling good fairy who doesn't quite know where she is. I don't mind doing that, but I think I will usually be picked as the baddie, let's face it, because people watch The Chase and that's how they see us.
You don't mind that?
Nah, it's work. So I'm in favour of work, and it is rather fun.
Well, Anne, thank you so much for taking part in the Panto podcast.
That's okay, thank you for asking me.